action. Welcome once again to Easy Elite English, and this time we are having reflex action for junior classes. Reflex action, a part of biology for junior classes. Stress-free online learning for Easy Elite English. A voluntary action. A voluntary action is an action where the brain receives some information, maybe from the sense organs like eyes or ears. The brain receives some information. The brain makes a decision or judgment what it should do. So after receiving the information, the brain makes a decision or a judgment. And then it orders the body parts concerned to act. Then it tells the limbs or muscles or gland to act. So first, the brain receives information. Second, the brain decides, it makes a judgment. And then it orders the execution of what the decision is. Now, supposing a building is on fire and eyes see the fire. It will send the message to the brain. Now the brain can have several options. The brain may decide on several options. It may tell the hands to call the fire brigade. It may tell the legs to run for life. It may tell the mouth to shout for help. Or it may tell the limbs to try to put out the fire. So it has many options. The brain has got many options. It decides on one option. Supposing it decides that the best choice is to run for life. So it sends the signal to the legs and says run. So the eyes will see the fire and send the message to the brain. The brain will be considering some alternatives. Should it call the fire brigade? Should the person run for life? Or should the person shout for help? The brain makes a decision, a judgment. If the brain decides to run, it will send the orders to the legs to run. This is a voluntary action based on consideration and judgment of the brain. The brain was thinking what to do. The brain had several options. The brain made a judgment and then ordered the limbs to run. A reflex action is an instant reaction, instant, immediate, without judgment. That is the main difference, no judgment. Why? Because it's controlled by the spinal cord and not by the brain. It is not controlled by the brain, it's controlled by the spinal cord. Now, the spinal cord cannot think. The spinal cord cannot consider options. The spinal cord cannot make judgments. The brain can think, the brain can make judgments, but the spinal cord cannot think, the spinal cord cannot make judgments. So it sends a quick, fixed, automatic order to the body parts concerned. A fixed order to the body parts. The response is the same in every person because the brain has no opportunity to think and decide differently. It just gets to know that the spinal cord has already made the body parts to act. So in reflex action, the brain does not decide. The spinal cord does not wait for the brain's judgment. The brain is informed of the matter. After the reaction is executed, the brain comes to know of the whole thing afterwards. And the reaction is the same in all persons. So let's see the differences between voluntary actions and reflex actions. Voluntary actions are controlled by brain and reflex actions are controlled by spinal cord. Voluntary actions may be slow or fast. You may take 1 second to decide, or you may take 1 minute to decide, or you may take 10 minutes to decide. Reflex action always immediate and instantaneous. Voluntary action is not the same. Different persons may make different judgments. Reflex action is the same in every person. So for instance, in our example, where the building was on fire, people may react differently. They have different options. Your brain may decide to phone the fire brigade. My brain may tell me to run away. Someone else's brain may tell them to shout for help. Yet someone may try to put out the fire themselves. So different persons may make different judgments, and also they may take different time to consider and act. They may take 1 second, they may take 5 seconds, they may take 5 minutes, they may take 10 minutes. Here, every person will have the same reflex, a bright flash of light, everyone will blink. An electric shock, everyone will jerk the limbs away. An irritating gas, the eyes will water, that means tears will flow in every person. A tap on the knee, the limb jerks or moves forward in every person. The reaction is immediate. One person taking 1 second, one person taking 5 seconds. No, all the reactions are immediate. And in every case, the response is the same. Why? Because there is no scope to consider and ponder. The mediation came from spinal cord, and the brain did not get a chance to think and take a different decision. The complete pathway of the message or signals or impulses to and from the spinal cord is called a reflex arc. The reflex arc is the pathway, the circuit, like electrical circuit, the pathway for the message to go to the spinal cord and the pathway for the message to come back from the spinal cord. So we have the receptor, maybe eye or ear or skin. There could also be internal receptors, but for the time being, let us think the sense organs are the receptors, all the sense organs. They will send a message to the spinal cord through sensory nerve. Because it is going to the central nervous system, it is sensory nerve. The spinal cord will send the order through the motor nerve, and it will send to the effector, which is a muscle or a gland. It sends the order what to do. So from the receptor via sensory nerve to the spinal cord, the message, and the reaction order, the order to react, from the spinal cord via motor nerve to the effector. So this is what we say a reflex arc. And after the spinal cord has told the muscle or gland what to do, it just sends action taken report to the brain. It says, hello brain, the spoon was hot, so I told the hand to drop it, just for your information. The spinal cord did not wait for the brain to take a judgment. It did what it thought best and then just informed the brain afterwards. So you have the receptor, for example, sense organ, to spinal cord and to the target effector like limb muscle or tear gland. So we have the going would be efferent and the coming would be efferent. The knee-jerk reflex is one of the most common examples, I should say one of the most common examples or the most common example of reflex action. Probably I should say the most common example, the perfect example. So here we have the kneecap. The kneecap is called patella. A slight tap here will make the leg move forward. So what happens when you tap? Through the sensory nerve, It goes to the spinal cord, and through the motor nerve it comes to the muscles, which tells the muscles to contract and move the leg. Do not remember the names of the muscles, it's not necessary at this stage, but just remember that the sensory nerve sends it to the spinal cord, and there is a sensory nerve, it will send it to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord will send the order how to react to the muscle, and the muscle will cause the limb to move. In fact, the example is so common that even in English language, we see a knee-jerk response. A knee-jerk reaction means an instant reaction without thinking, a quick or sometimes hasty reaction. A hasty decision is called a knee-jerk response. Now here we have an example of a reflex action. In fact, we have given two examples. The hand touches something hot. The hand is touching something hot. So the receptor would be skin. It is sensing a rise in temperature. So via the sensory nerve, it goes to the spinal cord. There is a sensory nerve. It is going to the spinal cord saying there is a sudden increase in temperature. The spinal cord sends the message via motor nerve. Via motor nerve, it sends to the muscle and says, move the hand away. The muscle contracts and the hand will be moved away from the hot object. So, from the sense organ skin to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord to the effector, which was muscle causing the limb to move. And here we have, supposing there is an irritation in the eyes. Now what happens? The eyes will send the message to the spinal cord. The spinal cord sends the message to the eyelids to close, or it sends a message to the tear glands to produce tears. Tears will flow. So the message is given to the tear gland or lacrimal gland, which will produce plenty of tears to wash the substance away. It wants to wash your eyes clean. So from the eyes, it goes to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord sends the order to the muscles of the eyelid to close and to the tear glands to produce lots and lots of tears so that the offending substance is washed away. So the target effector is a muscle in which action needed is to cause movement, like running, walking, closing the mouth, opening the eyes. In that case, it will be to the muscle, some movement. Or it will be to a gland so that it produces something, like here it is producing tears. To produce something, that is called secreting something. So the effector is always a muscle or a gland. If it is a muscle, muscle contraction produces movement. And if it is a gland, there is a secretion or producing of some new substance. This is the typical reflex arc. This is the sensory organ. This is the afferent. Afferent. It goes to the spinal cord. And we also know that another name is sensory. And it goes back the order. What to do? What to do? You have already got the message. What to do? The decision by the spinal cord, the order of the spinal cord is sent via efferent to a muscle to contract and cause movement, or it could be to a gland to produce something or secrete something. So here we have a simple drawing for exam purpose. This is an efferent one going to the spinal cord, and here we have and efferent pathway going to the muscles, although it could be glands as well. So from a receptor, usually sense organ, to the spinal cord, that is sensory, and from the spinal cord going to a muscle or gland, that is efferent or motor. Now, we know that a pin prick will cause your hand to jerk back. If I prick you with a pin, you will immediately move your hands away, and that is a reflex action. If I prick you, you will move your limbs away. That is a reflex action. But in spite of the prick, when in a hospital you are getting an injection, someone is giving an injection. So you feel the prick, but the patient does not move the limbs. In spite of the prick, the limbs are not moved. There is absolutely no movement. You keep still. So there is a prick. The spinal cord should tell you to move the hand away, but still you are not moving your hand away. Did the reflex action fail? Think and answer. And finally you will get the answer. Reflex action did not fail, but because you know in advance that a prick is going to come to you, someone is going to give an injection, you are ready for the prick. The brain tells you not to move. The spinal cord tells you to move, but the brain tells you not to move, and you do not move. That means the decision by the brain is more powerful than the reflex action by the spinal cord. Or we can say the brain is the master, the spinal cord is the assistant. The spinal cord is assistant. In absence of any judgment by the brain, the spinal cord can give an immediate order. But if the brain is aware and has already instructed the muscle not to move, the brain is telling the muscle not to move, the spinal cord will not tell the muscles to move or hands to move. So what happens? The brain is the master. So even reflex action can be controlled. You can practice self-control. Thank you. That was Easy Elite English on reflex action. We will be coming back with more such videos. Till then, thank you and goodbye.